home inspections, and we're going to talk about home inspections. We know that home inspections are super vital when buyers are buying a home, but it also can play a key role when sellers go to sell their home. And when we're showing homes to buyers, we always tell them, you're going to look at the pretties and we're going to tell you what's wrong with the house. But we don't go into certain areas. We can look at the foundation cracks and we can look for water stains, but I'm not going in the crawl space to see if there's raccoons or water, and I'm not going in the attic. And so it's imperative that you have a home inspection on your house, whether it's we call it resale, a used house, or a brand new construction house. And buyers can use whatever home inspector they want to use, but we always highly recommend Drew because we'd worked with him for years. We trust him. He's extremely thorough when he does home inspections, and he communicates extremely well. He always tells us and the buyers, it explains everything he finds, but he also clarifies it really well to say, this is important now, and this can probably be something that you wait maybe in a year for now for like a honey-do list. And so I think that's a really good trait in a home inspector, because often with buyers and even first-time buyers, it can be overwhelming when you look at that home inspection report because he has to list everything on there. So that's a little bit about Drew from my perspective in home inspections. But to move forward, welcome, Drew. Thanks for joining me this afternoon, morning. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Good,
Um,
good.
yeah, and I think what you mentioned is basically that's how it goes. Being thorough is important as a home inspector for sure, and going along with being thorough, you also have to be sensitive to the home buyers, whether they are new home buyers or first-time home buyers, or if they're experienced home buyers. You still have to be sensitive to how you explain certain things to them, what's important, what's not important. So, and being a home inspector, you could have 10 home inspectors go through the same home, and you're going to get a different list of things. For the most part, it'll be generally the same a report, but you are going to have inspectors that find different things and inspectors that find things that are more important than others. But generally, it's they're relatively similar. So, but again, we are all human, and there are going to be a couple of little things here and there that we miss. But being thorough as much as possible is the goal for sure.
Okay. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your company and your history, your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been doing home inspections for about 5 years. I'm an independent home inspector, licensed, bonded, insured in the state of Oregon. I basically can go anywhere in Oregon to do home inspections. I generally stick to the greater Portland metro area. I'll go about an hour outside of Portland. I do one inspection a day for the most part because I like to concentrate on that one home, and then I turn around the report the same day. The reports I do are checklist and a summary style report. The checklist basically just it's a checkbox list that describes all the different types of building components and materials that are used throughout the home and the condition, whether they're marginal, poor, or satisfactory. And then any defects or items to be concerned about would be put into a summary for items to say repair, monitor, deferred cost items, or hazardous items. And then also in the report, I also locate things like shutoff valves and just things to be aware of, and so that a homeowner can refer back to their report if they want to know where their main fuel shutoff is or their water shutoff is. Also documenting serial numbers and model numbers on appliances like the furnace and the air conditioners and whatnot, and the age of those units and the condition. So that's pretty standard. We do in Oregon, we follow the industry standards of practice, so we were required to follow that. I'm also a member of ASHI, which is the American Society of Home Inspectors, and not everybody needs to be a member, but I'm a member, and it kind of shows a higher standard in home inspectors if you're a member of an association. As inspectors, we are also required to have continuing education, so being a member of that society, then that helps us get our credits. We also meet once a month with the Oregon chapter of Home Inspectors, which is a division of ASHI, and that's where we can gain our education credits, and we meet as a group, about 20 of us Oregon home inspectors, and it's a great way for us to really kind of get together, share best practices, talk about different home inspection items and whatnot. So yeah, that's about it.
Okay. Yeah, your reports are amazing. I like them. I like how you organize them because I always tell buyers that we're not going to ask for everything, so you will have a list to do. So I think the way you organize it's very good. What are the most common issues that you typically find in a normal home inspection?
So in Oregon, our climate, the Pacific Northwest, we get a lot of rain. So gutters, uh, I see a lot of gutters that aren't cleaned or overflow. Um, and with that, I see that if you don't maintain the gutters, then you tend to get like water saturation on your soffits or your fascia boards,
Hmm.
and puddles or concentrated rain gathering around the foundation, around the ground. So I see a lot of gutters that really should be maintained better. Um, let's see. In home inspections, I see a lot of things that I call out. For instance, then there are little simple things. For instance, a drain line for your dishwasher isn't looped up underneath the sink properly to avoid cross contamination between your sink and your dishwasher. It's a real easy fix, but I see that almost every time. Um, and then other things, loose toilets that aren't tightened down to the ground or to the floor. Um, let's see, maybe in say the garage, I'll see typical cracks in the floors. I'll see typical cracks in foundation walls. But there again, I note that in the report. But then I explain, okay, this is just a simple little crack. You just need to monitor it. No big deal. There's nothing that needs to be repaired. Or I might find ones that I might actually recommend a specialist go out and reevaluate it. So stuff like that.
Okay. When buyers are looking at a house with their agent, what should they be looking for?
So if you're, say, meeting your agent at a house, and some of the things that you can look for as soon as you walk up to the home, I like to look at, say, the roof. If you can get a good view of the roof, just take a glance at it. Does it look like it's an old roof? What kind of roof is it? Is it a asphalt shingles? Is it wood shingles? Does it look like it's in disrepair? Does it look new?
Okay.
Don't expect you to know exactly if it's 10 years old or 20 years old, but that's what we do as a specialist. We'll go up on the roof and get a better look at it. The other thing is the driveway pitched towards the garage, or are there any negative grades around the yard that are pitched towards the house? Those are signs. If it is, you really need to be concerned or cautious about proper rain runoff and drainage around the house so that you know that the water is shedding away from the house properly. Um, let's see, another couple things. Say if you are walking around the perimeter of the house, are there bushes and trees that are up against the house itself? Those are really easy things to fix, of course, but that can cause damage to the siding and the roof. So you'll want to just see if that's been well maintained. Um, let's see, two more other little things. If you're going through the garage and you look at, say, the furnace or the water heater, you can kind of tell if you see a furnace that's from 1970 versus a newer one that's maybe from the 2000s or whatever. Maybe it's higher efficiency. Um, kind of get an idea if it looks old or if it looks newer.
Okay.
And then lastly, one thing you can do is look at the electrical panel, and this would be mostly in houses that are anywhere between, say, um, mid to late 60s up until about the 80s. You look at the electrical panel on the front of the panel. If it says Federal Pacific, then you're going to know that that's going to be something that will come up on the inspection report, and also for appraisers, because appraisers will also call that out. You don't need to touch the electrical panel. You don't need to open it up. You just look at the label on the front, and it would say Federal Pacific. So that's just something you can look at. But those are just a few of the bigger, larger items to kind of look at as you're walking through a house.
Okay, those are good. And if you're a home owner who's getting ready to sell, what are some things that a seller would want to do to prepare to get ready for a home
So
inspection?
I have a list of 10 things. These are pretty
Okay.
simple things. It's, for instance, tighten hinges. If you got loose hinges in your kitchen or your bathrooms on your cabinets, tighten them down. Make sure that they're not loose. Same with doorknobs. Sometimes doorknobs are loose. Freshen up the caulking. If you can freshen up some caulking either on the exterior or on the interior, say at the backsplash in your kitchen, just
Okay.
freshen it up. Unclog any drains that might be slow draining. Um, maybe have your furnace checked by an HVAC guy. Have them come out and do regular maintenance on it and make sure the filters are clean. Replace any burnt out light bulbs. Um, Maybe repair any holes or damaged drywall in the drywall if there are big holes. That's something that you could have done. Um, Make sure your electrical panel is actually labeled. So identify what each breaker is for, and make sure that it's labeled in your panel. That just kind of takes testing and going back and forth. Maybe if you have two people, one at the breaker panel and one at, and say in the living room, and you shut off a switch, and they can tell you, oh, okay, living room lights went off. So then you know, okay, that's for the living room, and you can kind of go through the house and do that process.
Okay.
Of course, trim back trees and bushes away from the exterior. Keep your gutters and downspouts clean and so they drain properly. So that's about it. It's a pretty simple sort of afternoon or weekend projects that you can go through. Some that you might want to hire a contractor to do, or a handyman, say if you needed to repair a drywall hole, maybe you have a contractor do that. But most of these other things most people can do on their own. And then for preparing your house for a home inspection, so once you've kind of gotten it ready and you're ready to start showing it, there's going to be four things basically. It's basically clear furniture and storage items out of, say, closets or areas where the home inspector is going to have to access the crawl space and the attic. A lot of times your attic access might be in a closet, and you might have a whole bunch of stuff in the closet. We're going to have to get into that closet with a ladder and get up into that hatch. Same with the crawl space. Sometimes those are in closets as well on the floor, and we're going to have to move stuff out of there, say vacuum cleaners or storage items, just to get down into the crawl space. So if you keep those areas clear, that's nice. Same with underneath your sinks. So in your kitchen sink and bathroom sinks, clear out the under cabinet as much as you can. And get all those cleaning supplies out or storage items so that we can properly check for drainage and for leaks. The third thing would be check your smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. Make sure that those are operating and up to date. If they're over 10 years old, they should be replaced. If they don't operate, of course, you're going to want to replace those. You'd want to check with you can check with the local fire marshal. They have a website that sort of indicates what the current code is as far as where you're supposed to have smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. It pretty much goes along with the age of the house. So if you, say, have a 1950s or 1970s house, you can kind of go along with what was existing. If you have a newer home, you want to update it as well to the current code as far as where to place the smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. And then lastly, the garage. A lot of people like to put their stuff in the garage because they're moving out. So they want to clear out their storage stuff in the house. Now, in the garage, if you store stuff, that's fine, but do it in a nice, tidy manner so that we can gain access to the furnace, the water heater, and the electrical panel. There's been many times where I've actually had to climb over stuff, move a lot of stuff just to get access to the water heater or the electrical panel. So it's nice to kind of have aisles or areas that we could get into to access those areas.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Do you recommend that sellers do like a pre-home inspection before they list the house? What are your thoughts on that?
A lot of times I do. If they have the funds to actually make the repairs, is a plus. Because then, say if you plan maybe a month or two before you actually list the house on the market, have that pre-inspection done, and then you can have time to get a contractor or handyman to go in and make those repairs. It really shows that you're putting your best foot forward too for potential buyers. It shows that you're willing to work with them. It shows that you're not really trying to hide anything. You're being proactive. So it kind of shows good faith in that manner. And so on the buyer's side too, if you're trying to decide between 2 or 3 different homes, and there's one home that's had a pre-listing inspection, it's kind of like, well, you already know what the issues are up front.
Right.
So you're not as hesitant to go into a negotiation as you would be if you had no idea what was going on with the home. So on both ends, it's kind of a benefit. And then on the broker's side, it's a benefit because it really saves time with negotiations. You already know what you're getting into. You can, uh, you can kind of negotiate accordingly based on what you've seen in the pre-listing inspection. So it really kind of saves time in the negotiation stage.
Okay. Okay. And I always recommend, even if there is a home inspection by the seller, that the buyer do their own, just because, your own inspector can find the different things or new things. Second
Absolutely.
set of eyes. Yeah. Just, I would never rely on theirs, but it's a good way to see what's wrong with the house or what has been repaired.
Yeah, there's
Uh,
been one time where I did a pre-listing inspection for a client, and about 2 months later, the buyer's agent called me and said, "Hey, can you do a home inspection at this address?" And it was the same address. So
well,
yeah, unfortunately, I had to decline doing the second inspection just because I didn't, it's kind of a conflict of interest. But I was able to refer them to one of my colleagues and a different inspector, and so it worked out.
that's interesting. What are some good general home maintenance tips right now for sellers for spring or while they're home? I mean, what are some things they should be doing or could be doing right now just to help improve their house since we have time? A lot of people have time.
Well, of course, it's always clean the gutters. It's always keep the bushes trimmed back away from the exterior. Um, so the other thing we were going to talk about was decks. I don't know if
Yes.
it was next on your list, um, but May is deck month,
Okay.
and it's this time of year where we're all starting to want to go outside and
Yes.
barbecue. Fortunately, we can't have gatherings yet, but soon enough we'll be able to have gatherings out on the deck and parties and whatnot. So it's really important that your deck, that you know that it's in good condition, especially second story decks or upper level decks. Those are
Yeah.
the ones that tend to be a bit more dangerous. If you have ones that are level to the ground, that are a single story, that are only a foot off the ground, yeah, you can look for things on that as well. But the second story decks are ones that you really need to pay attention to. So a few things that you can look for, and I don't expect every homeowner to know everything about these issues, but that's why you hire a professional to look at them. But you want to make sure, of course, the upper level deck is secured to the house properly with lag bolts to the ledger board. You want to make sure that there's all the brackets that you can visually see underneath. The metal brackets aren't rusted or corroded, and that they have the proper fasteners to hold them all together. Look for rotted wood. You can go around with a little knife and kind of stab any wood that might look rotted or water damaged. Same with wood that might be in contact with the soil. Usually wood should be elevated up off the dirt and maybe on concrete pylons or pillars or columns. Then you also look for loose handrails. Handrails and guardrails are supposed to withstand about 200 pounds of pressure, so that if somebody falls up against it, they're going to be sturdy and be able to support you, and that the spindles are not spaced too far apart, supposed to be no more than 4 inches apart from each other. And handrails going down steps and whatnot, make sure that they're sturdy and not loose, and that you have a nice grip that you can hang on to if you trip and fall. And then lastly, the finish. Sometimes decks, they tend to be under trees or in shade, and they can get really slippery throughout the winter season. And it's almost like an ice rink when you go out there. So treat your deck. Make sure that you clean off that moss. Really shouldn't pressure wash the decks. Just
Okay.
because that can cause damage to the wood. It can pit the wood and then just cause the wood to not last as long. So pressure washing the decks isn't really recommended, but there are chemical solutions you can get that you can spray on there. It's basically a moss killer, and it'll kind of kill the moss, and then you can spray it off with a hose, and that will kind of keep that slime down so that
Okay.
it's not slippery. And then treat it with a good deck treatment just so that it withstands and lasts.
That makes
So
sense. Can you pressure wash like a Trex deck?
yeah, you probably could. The composite decks would withstand the pressure washing a bit better. I still wouldn't recommend a really high pressure,
Okay.
um, but they would withstand a little bit better than the wood.
Okay. All right. Um, so what's the weirdest thing you've ever found in a home inspection?
Um, Well, I had to think about this one. One of the weirdest things I found was this was about a late 1950s home, and in the corner of the living room, a triangular cutout, probably about 5 feet by 4 feet, a big triangle cutout in the ceiling. And I looked up in there, and it was kind of a big tunnel, a wood tunnel that somebody made with all these facets. And then I went up in the attic, and it was a big box, almost about the size of a car, leading to a speaker. So it was basically a phonograph. You know what a phonograph is from an old
Yes.
time record player. It was basically a phonograph built into the house in the attic. That apparently the person that lived there must have been an audio technician or something from the 60s or 70s, and it was basically a big giant home subwoofer system. Uh, but it was built into the home. So it was very amusing. I got some good pictures of it and never have seen that before. I probably won't ever see that again. And I bet the neighbors loved it. Back in the 60s and 70s, the neighbors were probably wondering how come this guy's stereo system is so.
No dead bodies. No.
No dead bodies. There was one other time. I think I told you this story where I was doing an inspection at it was a unoccupied home. It was basically it was a condemned home, or not condemned, but it was abandoned.
Okay.
Trash left everywhere, and I knew to be careful because I wasn't sure if there was going to be squatters in there. So I was already on edge, hoping I wasn't going to walk up on anybody that was not supposed to be there.
Yep.
And kind of went around in the backyard, and there was a shed, and the door was open, and I was kind of going around the corner and looked in the shed, and there were two legs sticking out from underneath a pile of stuff, and I kind of had to step back for a minute because I was already kind of on pins and needles. It turns out they were mannequin legs, luckily. So no squatters at this house, but it was pretty fun.
That is funny. Well, is there anything else you want to add? I mean, I appreciate your time. I appreciate you joining me today. It's always good stuff,
No, like I said, we are in a strange time. Actually, I didn't mention this, but we are in a strange time right now when we're doing home inspections with the COVID-19 thing. So we are still moving forward with the home inspections, but is brokers and contractors, inspectors. We are being cautious. We are trying to keep. We're doing our 6 foot distancing. We're wearing gloves and masks, but we can still function. We can still do these jobs and get the clients what they need and move forward. So other than that, yeah, things have been going really well.
Good. Yeah, a lot of driveway discussions right now.
Yeah.
After the home inspections. Well, thank you, Drew, so much. We enjoy working with you. You're so good at what you do, and I appreciate you coming and joining me today.
Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it, and we'll talk to you soon.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.